What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and we are back in the Hyborian Age to talk Conan. I've got a brand new person talking about Conan again, Spider Dan. How you doing, Dan? You all right?
Oh, I'm very good. Thank you for having me. I am looking forward to getting deep, muddy, dirty, and dark in the Hyborian Age, as you described it. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this discussion, and I'm sure we'll get into all sorts of different topics within the Conan umbrella topic.
That's the umbrella, the vast shape that is Conan of the Hyborian Age. Yes, so we are. We're talking today. The story we will get to is the Queen of the Black Coast, which I did a little bit of sort of minimal research because I don't like to do too much before I read it and that sort of thing. But this was published in 1934, but written in 1932. So this is one of the first Conan stories that was written, but then was tailored and adapted over the years and sort of before it was sort of accepted for weird tales. We'll get to the story in a bit. Before we do that, so Dan, what I've asked everybody, Math and Matt, as they've come on to talk about this, is what's your introduction to Conan? What's your Conan origin story, if you have one?
Oh, good question. I think the first thing I ever kind of that kind of crossed my way, which was Conan related, was actually the cartoon. Do you remember Conan the Adventurer?
Yes.
Conan the Adventurer. And it's this kind of very sword and sorcery based thing, and you had a team of all these different kind of heroes.
It was all the snake people with the villains, weren't they? The Thulsa Doom and all that.
Yeah, all that. I don't know if he was called Thulsa Doom or not. Maybe it was a rights thing. I can't remember. But yeah, it was almost a bit like a serial as well, because they'd have I think they'd have like a beginning thing where he almost died, and then you'd have the theme song, and they'd come back, and you'd see how he survived that cliffhanger, and then it would follow on quite directly, if I remember rightly. But again, you never back in the 80s and 90s, those things were never played in order,
No.
so you never saw it in the right order. You just had to enjoy what you got as a kind of a one-off adventure. But yeah, I think it was that, and then as I grew older, I saw the Schwarzenegger movie, which I need to rewatch. Really, I haven't seen it in so long. But
that first one is very good. It's I watched it again recently. It's very it's one of it's John Milius, who is notoriously sort of like macho. It's either, I can't remember which film. There's a film he was on that he got paid in shotguns. Like that's the kind of like shit that he did. Like dude was clearly batshit crazy.
I think him and Conan would probably get on there.
Oh, he loved it. Like he went to, cause I think like Dino De Laurentiis was sort of like, we want to do this because it's a pulpy character and it can be, franchised, and he was looking at all the sort of sequels there. And then John Milius comes out and he's like, this is a statement on stoicism and like Nietzsche's Superman, Ubermensch, and all this other stuff. And he was like, this is what, and that's what is good about life, to see your destruction of your, all that is like John Milius. That's all. And you can sort of think like, man, this dude must have been intense. Like
I was going to say, I remember it not having much dialogue. I remember.
Yeah.
Again, I remember, I think I watched it when I was like 13, and, I like the action scenes, the gore, and, again, all that cool stuff, and the elements and the world building, that was really, really cool. But I just remember it being very, almost like a Western, like a Sergio Leone Western, where it's like, there's not much dialogue. The hero very rarely speaks, if at all. But he kind of comes in, there's this revenge story, and he, takes out everybody, and there's a guy who turns into a snake who who's sadly recently passed, James Earl Jones. I've seen a lot of people like recall that role as well, because it was kind of so iconic for him as well. And yeah, so like that, and again, some of the other stuff, and I think like as I grew older, I realized how kind of intense and dark and disturbing some of the stories were, and violent, and you know, and we'll get into the author as well, I'm sure. But yeah, so I actually got kind of started reading those short stories. I read Queen of the Black Coast when I got like Kindle, when Kindle was just kind of being a thing, because you could obviously, with the stuff that's out of copyright, you could just download, you don't need to pay for it. So I remember reading Edgar Rice Burroughs for the first time, A Princess of Mars, and I got this because I was like, I'm kind of into my comic booky, pulpy, you know, much like you, Scott, those kind of characters.
Yeah.
So I thought, why not kind of delve into that? And that's basically what I did. I read some kind of Jules Verne and stuff, and, you know, Frankenstein, Dracula, you know, dip my toe in all those, Invisible Man, that sort of stuff.
Nice.
And yeah, so that it was kind of around then where I started kind of reading them. And I also read, I saw another kind of Robert E. Howard character I really liked was Solomon Kane, and there was
Yes.
a movie that came out, I think 2010, 2011, which I really enjoyed, with James Purefoy in it. And I love that he used his kind of West Country accent as well.
Yeah. Oh no, he's ace. It's a great,
Yeah,
it's a great
it's
film.
so good. And again, I wouldn't see an action. You wouldn't see an action film with a West Country accent. Like, you don't expect it, but it works. It absolutely works. And that whole kind of puritanical aspect to that character. And again, I remember reading some of those stories when I was away, like rehearsing at Panto Camp, and you know, I was sick of all the wankers there, so let me read some Solomon Kane or some Conan. I don't have the whole collection of Conan. I realized, because I realized I didn't have the Frost Giant's Daughter, and I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to find that. Luckily, you can find it online.
Most it's ready, yeah. Most of it's readily available online at
Oh,
this
absolutely.
point. So.
Yeah, I found it, and you know, it's a very short. That's like one of his shortest ones. It took me all of 2 minutes to read. So yeah, it's kind of. I think you don't get those kind of sword and sorcery kind of that genre really, probably without Robert E. Howard and his work, and you know, and I think I tend to read a lot of the adaptations. Same with like kind of H.P. Lovecraft. I'm more interested in a way in kind of reading or watching, experiencing people's version of his work as opposed to his actual work to a degree. You know, I still read it. I still enjoyed them for the most part. Again, there's some problematic elements
Yeah.
for the modern eye and the modern sensibilities. But you've got to appreciate kind of what they did and how they kind of evolved the storytelling of these kind of fantastical elements. And these two guys were very, very good friends. I read that they'd sent over 100,000 letters to each other, correspondence.
Yeah, a lot of correspondence going on.
Yeah, which will again kind of explain some of the problematic elements probably, and the way of, you know, if you hear if those mind worms are getting in there, you know, after you speak to HP for too long, I can completely understand. But yeah, so yeah, I've kind of slowly but surely kind of experienced Conan in various different media, in various different ways. I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I'm not an expert of the Hyborian Age or anything like that. But there is something to the character and that world that that E. Howard creates, and you know, this story there's a lot of kind of cool imagery in this, and the way he describes some of the action sequences as well, and the characterization I think is really good as well at some points. But yeah, that's my Conan journey. My through my Hyborian Age.
See, I mean, it's interesting you say about the links with Lovecraft, especially with this story, because this story definitely has, like, we'll get to it as you get towards, you know, the latter half of the story, and they're in this sort of damned city or village, whatever. We'll get into the story, but there's a whole flashback where like Conan is revealed to him is the history of all these residents in this place, and it is very much like, oh, this feels quite, you know, not just sort of like this is like a chapter of Cthulhu or the Mountains of Madness, and like it feels very Lovecraftian. But the other thing I like that Howard took from Lovecraft is he didn't just create a character and say like, I created Conan and that's it. He's like, I created the Hyborian Age and here's a map of it and here's the people that are in it. Go nuts. Like, you know, it's kind of like, oh, I just created a place. And it's almost like a you know, GTA or sort of like Elder Scrolls or Elder Rings. It's an open sort, of, everyone can go, oh, I'm gonna do a story. I have a character that exists in Stygia or Kush or one of those other places, and it's sort of like cool. It
I,
exists and stuff.
I think he literally. I think him and I think from Lovecraft as well. I think there's several stories that are
Mm,
literally, quite literally, referencing Lovecraft
yeah.
mythos. Cthulhu, or all the other kind of dark and elder gods and things. Because they were so close that he was
Mm,
like, yeah, have a play around in that universe. We'll use that. Reference this or reference that. Talk about this, which is cool. It's a cool idea that another author could go, yeah, have a play.
yeah.
When they're still alive, when they're still working on stuff, they go, nah, just do what you want. Cool.
Yeah,
That's
it's kind of cool. Like first early shared universe. That's that
mm,
sort of thing of an early sort of open world plan where it's just sort of
yeah,
like, yeah, as long as you don't mess with my stuff too much, I'm quite
yeah.
cool. Go do what you want.
I guess it's kind of a Tolkien-esque idea as well. Like he
Mm,
created all these, the elven language and this whole world, Middle Earth, and all the different areas and different races, and the whole history of that. So I guess it's kind of he. I guess he. I mean, technically, is he a contemporary of those? I guess he would be.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny because I do find that kind of hilarious as well. That like, yeah, but at the same time, I think like the
Mm,
30s is when The Hobbit is first published, and then obviously when but by that point he'd already written an awful lot. So it is quite funny that you have someone like Tolkien who's is it Oxford or Cambridge
I think
educated,
so. Yeah.
and like you say, delving into the language and sort of the script of how to do sort of Elven and all this other stuff, and then creates the world out of that. This sort of massive history of the Second Age, the Third Age, and so on and so forth. And Robert E. Howard's similar, but it's like, okay, what's the crux of Yod? Big dude with a fucking sword. And you're like, all right, cool. So how does this work? What happened in the previous age? There is a previous age. There was a man called Cull. What did Cull do? Big dude with a fucking sword. All right, cool. I'm getting a bit of it. What happened in the future age? Well, there are witches and there are other sorcery. What happens there? Puritan with a fucking sword. Cool. All right. Well, we're good.
Very direct man. Very
Yeah.
direct man. And I remember. I always recall the stories like of people talk about like Conan's creation, and I love the fact that he was like one night Conan was just behind me holding an axe,
Yeah.
saying right.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool. I guess he's forced himself into creation almost, which is is an interesting story, and it feels right for that character and the
Mm.
way he is, the way he handles himself. So yeah, I always it always makes me chuckle. I just imagine him just kind of sat there,
Yeah.
just like
I'm so
scribbling
sorry.
away, and just like
Yeah.
faster, more blood,
Yeah.
more
More bosoms.
more bosoms, more buxom ladies for me to
That's it.
make love to. More people to kill. Yeah, more
Yeah.
people to behead, monsters and freaks. So yeah. There is that kind of entertaining aspect of it as well, and yeah, it's strange almost that that we've. This is kind of standard now, isn't it? The idea
Mm.
of these kind of shared universes or grand, canvases that they're painting and creating within and telling different stories in these different areas, and again there's a very loose chronology. I think I know that some people have placed different stories in different areas, and
Mm.
also there's like that wasn't a Conan story, or was meant to be, and then it wasn't, then it was retroactively, so, but yeah, I think you can enjoy a Conan story in isolation as well. You
Oh,
don't need to
yeah,
read,
100%.
you
Yeah,
know.
they are just very much like you say, fan. It's sword and like sorcery kind of. It's fantasy, but like one of those. It's not high fantasy in that
No.
kind of like there's sorcery in it, and there are
Mm,
dragons, and there's mythical
yeah.
creatures, but there's kind of like I was talking about this with Matt a couple of weeks
Mm,
when we talked about this a couple of episodes ago. It's kind of like high fantasy when you read like Lord of the Rings or some of those. There's like an elegance to them, even in the dirt of it. Like it's kind of like the um kings, and it's sort of like we're part of the royal family, or this is the high elves or the
mm.
high wizard. And again, like Conan's like basically like a working class wanderer who just sort of like ends up becoming king at the end of things. But even like we said when we read I was talking with Math, like he troubles with being king, and you're kind of like, yeah, no, this is just sort of like he just happens to live in a fantasy land. He doesn't kind
Yeah.
of give a shit that he's there. He just sort of that's what he's
Yeah.
going to deal with.
I guess it's kind of like Alien, isn't it? It's kind of like
Yeah.
truckers in space. It's lo-fi sci-fi. It's not
Mm,
Star Trek, the kind of prosperous, everything shiny and
exactly.
I guess yeah, you're kind of right. It's kind of it's kind of the other aspect or the other end of the Lord of the Rings kind of thing. It's dank and dirty and dark, and everyone's a bit
Yeah.
messed up. But
Yeah.
then Lord of the Rings, everyone's aspiring to be great and grand and better. So yeah, so I guess that's the two ends of the spectrum.
Mm.
You can enjoy both
Oh
in
yeah, 100%. They're both
totally
fantastic. I
totally
like.
different ways.
Yeah, they provide. This is pulp. This is kind of like
Yeah. Oh,
not
absolutely.
much in slow brow, but it's definitely pulpy. Well, let's talk about the story because I do. There was at least there were several moments where I sort of it made me giggle, but it obviously not supposed to. I don't think.
No, no.
Um, but it does
Mm.
because it's one of those kinds of sort of stories. But Queen of the Black Coast is it's not the longest story, but it's kind of like a longer sort of one of these longer sort of short stories. The story is like Conan joins with a small a small group of sailors, sort of merchant sailors and stuff. And he is bigger than all of them. It's kind of sort of it's great. He's outstripping them, and they talk about this woman, the Queen of the Black Coast, and she's sort of the pirate queen of this area. Um, and then they come across her, and they try to defend themselves, and Conan tries to take out some people with his bow and arrow, and ends up sort of in a fight deck to deck, and he is swinging his axe and sword and defending himself, and eventually sort of his valor and sort of basically sort of virility in battle. Um, the Black Queen, the Queen of the Black Coast, just fancies him. Her name is Belit, and she basically says, "Take me now, you big muscular fiend." Is in a nutshell.
Yeah, pretty much.
Um, Conan agrees. They sort of basically pillage up and down the Black Coast for a time and enjoy themselves with their crew. And then eventually they come to the opening of a river, and it's a poisonous river. And they know that there's a city or something down there, and she just decides she wants to ransack this city. And so they head down the river, and when they get there, they find there's no one around. It's very empty. But there is jewels to be had in the tomb and all these other places. And then when they find out that they sort of get attacked, or they're getting stalked by creatures, which we'll talk about what they are and how they're described. Um, and then they find that the boat has been ransacked or the water has been taken, and so Conan goes off with a small band to find water, and in doing so, he's knocked unconscious. It is revealed to him the full history of where these creatures and everyone has come from. It's a little bit Prometheus, kind of weird, like black
Yeah,
goo kind of
Black
things going on.
Lotus. Yeah, kind of
Yeah,
maybe think of like the for the man who has everything, where they get the plant and they see like an idealized version of their lives, kind of thing.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
Black Mercy, I think it's called.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
But then basically Conan, when he comes to, finds that all the other people, the others have been ravaged apart from him, returns to the boat and finds that everyone, including Belit, has been killed. And eventually he stands and fights in battles with a number of these beasts again until he's victorious. That's it in a nutshell, really. I think that's it. So
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, again, it's a short story, so it's pretty
yeah.
straightforward. Not really many twists and turns. I decided to choose this one because I remember like Conan as a pirate, and I thought
Hmm. Hmm.
that's interesting. That's something a bit different that you don't really get a lot in his kind of stories or in his films or other appearances, audiobooks, whatever you want to talk about. And so I thought that's a cool concept. And I remember Belit being in it, this kind of
Mm.
pirate leader, and I thought that's cool to have like a a somewhat feminist icon, even within these books and framed as they are, and is very much with a male gaze. It
Yes.
is what it is. But at least there's something to her. She is in charge. There's never a moment of doubt among the other pirates that she isn't in charge. They don't like. There's no mutiny or anything. It's like she is the goddess. We
Hmm.
follow her. We listen to her. We'll do whatever she says. We'll die for her. So there's something to her. There's definitely and Conan sees it as well, and she sees something in Conan. and the way this book opens, it was like, I'm in. I'm absolutely in. We've got Conan riding hell for leather on this horse. People are chasing him. We don't know
Yeah.
what's gone on. We have no idea. And all of a sudden, he just leaps off of this cliff onto this boat. And this guy's like, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm Conan. Deal with it."
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I'm in.
Uh,
And he was kind of like, "Yeah, we could do with a fighter actually, so we probably won't kick you off." And he's like, "What, what happened?" And he was like, accidentally got into like a fight, and then he was in court, and it's such a Conan thing. He was like, "I didn't like the way it was going, so I
yeah.
killed the judge."
Yeah. I basically, I cleaved his head a twain. And you're like, cool, that's all right. And he's like, yeah, then I killed the guards and ran.
Yeah,
Found a
that's it.
horse, and did one. That's you're like, oh right, oh
Boom.
well. Yeah.
Boom, you're in, and
Yeah.
that's it. And now he's a pirate. Now he's a sailor. Now he's on the seas. However many seas the Hyborian world has, he's on them. And yeah, I love that. I was like, brilliant. This is why I remember this. This is the part I remember really enjoying. Is those moments where he's just like, I just kill people when I feel things are not going my way. That is the way it's going to be. Yeah, but just a brilliant opening. So much fun. And again, made me laugh, made me chuckle, made me have fun with it, and the kind of ridiculousness of it, and yeah, and I could imagine like Arnie, jumping, with his horse, or I think he gets off the horse, maybe I can't remember, but yeah, I can imagine him doing this kind of thing in a film. It's very much of that character in his version.
Oh yeah, no. I'm just looking at the dialogue, and there's just some great moments where, like, because he gets on the ship, and the guy who runs the ship, he's kind of like, well, you're here now. So we might as well introduce ourselves. And he's like, I'm Tito and I'm Master Shipman. And Conan just says, I'm Conan, a Sumerian. And you're like,
Oh, Sumerian.
yeah, all right, cool. All right, I'll run with that. Yeah, it's so very sort of this. I mean, that the intro is one of the bits that made me chuckle because it is so sort of like, and when he sort of explains why he's there, he's sort of like, okay, cool, all right. It does
He almost doesn't. He almost does it. I always feel like he doesn't want to. He's kind of like, I don't need to explain myself. I'm here now, and this is how it's going to be. But I'm kind of glad we still got the I think Tito is like, yeah, but why? Why are you here? What happened? Why are we going to be in trouble now because we saved you? Do they think you're on our crew already? We're going to get chased down. Like, what's happening? I'm glad it came out eventually though.
Yeah, well, Tito kind of acknowledges that because he does say, he says, well, so we can't really go back to that port, but luckily I don't need to trade there, so we're fine.
Like, don't worry about it. It's all cool. It's all cool. Don't worry. It's fine.
Yeah, like at any point Tito was going to go, I'm sorry, this is unacceptable. Get off my boat.
But he looks at him and he goes, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm absolutely not doing that with this guy.
There's a sort of a machismo that goes with this story. Like this is one of I've read a couple of Conan stories. This is one of like the most macho man stories of all. And do you remember that sort of like the old I mean, Arnie got in trouble for it a bit at the time, but even when he sort of referred to someone as a girly man, and you don't work out, girly man. Like this feels like that same sort of thing. There's a great moment when after everything, they see the ship. It's called the Tigress, isn't it?
Great name.
Appears, and it's coming close, and Tito's like, we've got to run. When Conan says, well, we're not. It's faster than us, so we'll basically catch up, and we'll all get shot in the back. So we might as well fight, or at least we'll give him a bit of a warning. And he asks him to hand him a bow and arrow, and he says, "I've never considered it a particularly manly weapon, but I've learned how to use it." I was just like, oh my god! Like you just kind of, he's like, pass me your effeminate bow and arrow, whilst I try to murder these people. Yeah.
Oh dear. And it's strange because he talks about the different type of people. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about race in this story,
Yes.
and I'm sure
Yeah,
we'll get to
that.
it. But they talk about, he's like, oh, they are own. I can't remember, they're Hyrulean, or I'm not entirely sure who what kind of race they were initially. They're short, they're stocky, they're broad, but they don't fight well, and they're good at rowing, and
men of the sea, I think is
men
what
of the
he
sea,
described.
merchants and stuff, and it's like, yeah, these guys can't fight. So that's kind of why Tito's like, well, we might as well use you for it, kind of thing. You can join us. And yeah, it's again, it puts Conan as this really unique figure. It kind of,
Mm.
he stands out no matter where he goes, whatever he encounters. He's always so unique. Even among like the kind of the Asgardian kind of area. I think it's
Valhalla, they have Valhalla
Valheim and
yeah, Vanaheim.
Vanaheim.
Yeah.
Yeah, they use a lot of the kind of Norse mythology, which works for me.
Mm.
He's got they describe all of his different bits of armor from different areas, and he's got
I
the
love that.
yeah, that was really cool. That he's well traveled, and he has the scar, and
Mm.
he's been everywhere, he's done everything.
But more than them just being well traveled, it's like the best of that area.
Yeah,
So it's like he's got the best sandals from so and so, the red scarlet cloak of somewhere, and then this the blue steel of somewhere else. It's like not only has he been there, like he's acquired
Mm.
these things whilst he's there. So like Conan lives well where he can.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, I dug that, and again, it gives you just a sense of the character as well of how, even amongst all the weird and wacky things that even we just encounter in this story, that it's still completely a unique being. Even probably among Sumerians,
Yeah.
he is an entirely unique character. So yeah, and again, that this opening scene comparing himself with the sailors, you
Mm.
can see that absolutely that he's completely different. Mentally, emotionally, physically, you name it, he's
Yeah.
totally unique.
Yeah. I mean, this is Arnie on a ship full of Danny DeVitos. This is this.
That is a great way to describe
Yeah.
it.
But anyway, they do catch up. The Tigress catches up, and it goes. A fight breaks out, and this is where we get the description, really, the first description of these warriors, and it's kind of I don't know. I struggle with this. Let's talk about the descriptions
Okay,
used
yeah,
because we
let's
need
go. Let's
we
go with
need
this.
to talk about it because
I when I recalled this again, those two things I recall was the pirate thing and the Belit being in it. Those were the two things I recall. And I remember it being a pretty good story. I did not remember. I know Robert E. Howard is known for being maybe a little misogynistic or sexist, but also being quite racist. Again, we've talked about his collaborations and communication with H.P. Lovecraft, who again just
yeah.
atrocious kind of the stuff he did and said about gay people, women, and black people as well. So there is that problematic element to this. So yeah, he describes, I mean, I sent you a paragraph, and it's a short paragraph, but he describes the pirates, the crew, Belit's crew, as black 3 times within that paragraph. He says black, I think blacks and ebon skinned,
Yeah.
I think he says. I was like, I knew that from the second they were introduced, Robert. I don't think you need to tell us like all the way through the book. He's constant. Even there's a fantasy creature later on that we'll get to, but even that I'm like that there's
Connotations going on there.
coded racism in there as well,
Yeah.
which again we'll get to, but
It does feel a bit like he's going. I met these black people. And you go, did they mention they were black? Yeah, they were black. Yeah, they were so black. And you go, I get it. Yeah, you didn't have to mention it 3 times. Like we
exactly,
got it. Yeah,
exactly. It's like I've got a black friend or I've got a gay friend, and it's
yeah,
like okay, what? But tell me about them. What are they like? Well, they are black and they are gay.
yeah.
Okay,
Anything
what
else?
else?
What else do you know about them?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I guess that's all they are. I guess that's all the only characteristics they can possibly have.
Exactly. The weird thing is though, and this is where and this is it's where well, let's not we won't talk about Lovecraft because that's a whole different
No,
ballgame.
yeah,
But the thing with Howard in this case, although he describes them and it's clearly almost like an issue, they are the best fighters. They are badass. They are incredibly good seamen and pirates. So it's not like he's sort of saying they're black and they're kind of and then being derogatory about them. He's kind of like, no, these guys are amazing, and like Conan's able to kill them because he can kill everybody. But like he even there's like it was it's a fight.
Yeah.
Like for Conan, this was like he suggests he's getting tired sort of towards the end and the fight and stuff. Like he's fighting, but they're not like don't know. It's a weird kind of
Yeah,
almost like a backhanded compliment. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, or kind of like positive discrimination, is it really? It's
Yeah.
like they're the strongest, they're the best, they're the toughest because they are black or because they just are that good.
I,
Yeah,
I I think
it's an unhealthy. I think it's almost like an unhealthy obsession he has, or
yes,
like a almost almost maybe like a fetish or something.
that's a
Almost,
really good word. And I think, but what one
yeah.
of the, 'cause it comes up so often in this story.
Every page.
Yeah,
I think if you just like got the digital copy of this and just like highlight, ask them to highlight the word black, you will
yeah,
find it on every single fucking page. Not only
multiple
describing the
times.
crew, not only
Yeah,
describing the creature later, not only describing the water, only describing, you know, just the general area. And
Belit's
again,
hair.
Bleach
Yeah,
hair, yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like, I didn't think the Queen of the Coast was like going to be a literal thing, like a
yeah.
literal, like this is the coast of black people. This is where they,
Mm,
in Hyboria they live. I didn't. I thought it was like like the pirates of dark water. It's like
yes,
which it kind of
the,
is as well. There's kind of like the
the
tainted
elements
water and
there.
stuff. There is that, but I guess you could read it either way. Maybe it's a double meaning. I don't know, but it feels more like the fetishization or whatever the word is of the black people and the area that he's discussing. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's very strange. But it became like I was like, fucking hell, shut up about this. Like, we
well,
know, we know this from like you can just have one page and use that as going, right, they are black, they are this, they are that. And then we'd know, but it just goes on and on and
well, it's
on.
not. It's things like this, and I wanted to sort of put into sort of like this hit because the 1920s, 1930s, right?
Sure, sure,
So
yeah.
we had,
Context.
yeah. So and I know, I'm not trying to say he's of his time. That's not
Yeah.
the point.
No.
But there was absolutely, you said about the fetishization of it. That was quite a part of the culture. This kind of like the exoticism of Africa
Mm,
was a massive thing. Like they had people go out and just film animals and things in Africa, and then they'd come home and go, right. Then they would sell stock footage because it was so expensive, it was so
yeah.
exciting to have it in films.
Mm,
So it was just, there was this weird fascination with Africa at the time. But it's just there's this one thing where he says, he's describing them. This is when they first meet them. So through the water,
mm,
and a low rail swarmed with naked blacks that chanted and clashed spears on oval shields.
mm.
And you do sort of go, yeah, this is like Zulu bad. This
Yeah.
is,
Mm,
it makes you feel kind of uncomfortable.
definitely. Definitely.
Um, so there is that. The other thing then is just I want to throw this in because you say about the fetishization. One of the things I feel with
Mm,
Robert E. Howard is I don't know. There's kind of like a place of origin is incredibly important to him.
mm,
Like it's Conan of Samaria, and then as he meets people throughout the stories, they're like, "I am of Stygia, I am of Aquinonia, and I am of Kush, and I'm of this." Like everybody is of a place. No one's like, "Yeah, I'm from there," but I kind of sort of like, but like I've grown up here, and
mm.
my dad's of there, and my mum's of there. Like
Yeah.
everyone's very
I
much sort of
eloped. I eloped to this area.
yeah, exactly.
There's no eloping. There is no
Yeah,
eloping.
no, there's a lot of like you know
Unless you're Conan. Unless you're Conan, it's all eloping.
yeah, yes, yeah. There's a lot of people everywhere. Like they do, they intermingle and all this other stuff. But like, I don't know. He's got a very racial thing about racial
Hmm.
divide, racial sort of identification. I
Even
think
like we were saying, even the sailors go, I am Tito of
of
Hyrulia or
yeah,
wherever it was. And it's like, okay, good. Don't know where that is. Don't have any frame of reference for where you're from. But Conan then describes their type of people and their physical
exactly.
traits, which
Yes,
again is something he's kind of almost, I don't know, like it's almost like, I don't know, like almost like a genealogist or something. Like that's his like
locked into that
fascination.
thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. It's bizarre. But yeah, and again, even like and Belit, that goes into so much kind of descriptive. And again, I think his descriptive passages are actually really good.
mm.
A lot of them when he
Oh, it's
gets off
great.
that kind of
Yeah,
fascination
yeah,
with race and where people are from, like the battle and the swinging of the sword and the bisecting of creatures and things, and the arrows flying, and like they got rid of like Tito so quick I didn't even notice he died.
Yeah.
I was like, they were like, no, Conan's on this ship now. He's
Yeah.
traded
That's
up.
it. Yeah, traded up. Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. But
so bizarre.
it is, but this is where we meet Belit, the queen of the Black Coast.
Hmm.
Now she has these dark skinned, you know, um, warriors
Crew, yeah,
crew.
pirates,
So
whatever you want to say.
and she's the queen of the Black Coast. It's all this thing. So my first assumption was going to be, well, they're going to have a black woman
Mm.
leading this black crew. Like, cool, all right, that's interesting. Nope, she might as well be from Ireland. Like, she's got like like black
Yeah.
hair, and then the palest sort of like snow white skin and the reddest of lips, and it's sort of like
Mm.
the next sort of like obsession for Howard is like "Ooh, I want to write this
Yeah.
really sexy woman." Yeah.
Yeah. I guess there is like Edgar Rice Burroughs, like we talked about. We did the Disney discussion recently,
Mm.
and I remember you sent a comment in about John Carter, and I said how much I enjoyed reading the story, but again I know that there's a lot of problematic elements.
Mm.
The idea that the white man goes to this new
Yes.
uncharted area, kills the race of the people that's there, shags the women, and it's all great, and
Yeah.
there is a lot of that here, but unfortunately I think this, with like a Princess of Mars, you've got, and even Lovecraft to a degree, he doesn't go like black people are bad, or I'm going to talk about black people in my story. It's going to be a weird, I'm going to have that alienation and that kind of that xenophobia, but I'm going
Mm.
to attribute it to fish people, or whatever you want to do it. And then
Oh,
again,
if
like,
you ever find out there's a story, I forget what it's called now, so the family history of Jeffrey someone or other, something like that,
mm,
and it's literally about him, his great grandfather, or his great grandfather
mm,
mating with gorillas in the jungle.
wow.
Yeah, it's just one of the stories you read and you're like,
Yeah.
this is like,
Again,
uh,
I've not read a lot of Lovecraft, so I don't know if there are stories out there where he is outwardly
mhm.
racist. But the ones I did read and the ones I'm aware of are not quite so,
Yeah, yeah.
like this necessarily.
No,
But yeah, yeah, it's bizarre that he he just yeah, it's like I'm fascinated by these people and this type of culture, but also I'm horny as fuck.
yeah,
I really love, you know, I want to shag this woman. And again, and again, I remember her being strong and being this captain of
mm,
this crew, but immediately she goes, "You're good. You can join my crew. Also, let's bang!" Like
yeah.
immediately drops her clothes. Like doesn't
Not
say maybe
not that
three
she's
words
wearing
to him.
much anyway. She's
True.
wearing
Yeah.
basically a bodice and her boobs are out. That was it. But yeah, she
Yeah.
says, "I am Belit. I am queen. Look at me, Conan. I am Belit, queen of the Black Coast of O Tiger of the North. You are cold of the showy mountains." And then basically says, "Be my king."
Yeah. Straight
He
away.
was like, "All right, cool." And Conan's just like, "Meh, all right."
And again, it's part of that kind of male fantasy, that kind of, and again, you could say that Conan might be a self-insert for
Oh yeah,
Mr. Howard. It's
this is like a Playboy letter. This is a letter to Playboy. This is like, you won't believe what happened when I joined the crew with this pirate ship.
oh mate, let me tell you a story.
Yeah,
Oh, here we
exactly.
go.
Yeah.
Here we go, Barry bullshitter again. Yeah, you were a pirate, were you? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, sure. Yeah, shag the sexy one, did you? Oh yeah, pirate
That,
queen, sure.
yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Like Howard telling these stories, and he's going like, "No, no, this is what happened." And you're going like, "Oh, whatever." Like, yeah,
Yeah, and she said I was so good and rough at lovemaking. There's that whole section where she was like, "You took me, you had me, and you crushed me," and
that was it. Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, this is getting a little again, a
yeah.
little dicey
Go
on that
go
end."
have a go have a cold shower, Robert. Go have a cold
Yeah.
shower. Come back to the writing after.
And again, what another thing that's interesting about Conan is, he's known as Conan the Barbarian a lot
Mm.
of the times, not the Cimmerian. But he is quite an intelligent character. I
Oh
remember,
yeah.
like he has this. I saved this kind of monologue that he read out because I thought it was fantastic. This lovely bit of writing. Let me just find it. Yeah, so he said, "I've known many gods. He who denies them is as blind as he who trusts them too deeply. I seek not beyond death. It may be the blackness averred by the Nemedian skeptics, or Crom's realm of ice and cloud, or the snowy plains and vaulted halls of Nordheimer's Valhalla. I know not, nor do I care. Let me live deep while I live. Let me know the rich juices of red meat and stinging wine on my palate, the hot embrace of white arms, the mad exultation of battle, when blue blades flame and crimson, and I am content. Let teachers and priests and philosophers brood over questions of reality and illusion. I know this. If life is illusion, then I am no less an illusion. And being thus the illusion is real to me, I live, I burn with life. I love, I slay, and am content.
Yeah.
Which I thought was awesome. Probably the highlight of the book for me was just
Oh
this.
no, I've got it
section.
bookmarked. That was the one I was like, that's that's almost like the from the movie, isn't it? Like what is good in life?
Yeah, it's
That
basic. Yeah, they kind of
is that.
condense it into
Yeah, but
into that.
that's why Howard's remembered, because that dialogue, like that moment, is when you go like, oh, that's good. Like that's a really
It's
cool
like
kind
they
of.
should call him Conan the Philosopher.
Yeah, but he'd be insulted by that, you know. Be like, you
Yeah,
know,
he would. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I love the fact that he has this philosophy of life, where he's like, well, he lives in the moment, and he's kind of like, you know, I will fight and I will live and I will, you know, thrive in that moment. But if something better comes along, yeah, I've not sort of like morally hung up on sort of leaving
Yeah.
somebody else to go like, well, that's better, and I live for now.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't
Yeah,
I leave you?
I mean, you see what happened to Tito, didn't you? So
Yeah.
he really doesn't care about
No.
anybody.
Well, yeah, you're right, because when Tito and the crew are killed and stuff, and Conan joins Balit, there's a part where like Conan's basically sort of stood by her side and then watches like as the crew take all of Tito's whatever he had on his ship.
Mm.
Well, and he's kind of like Conan's just sort of indifferent to the whole thing. He's just sort of like, well, that's what happens in life. That's the kind of yeah, keep on rolling.
Such is life, you know.
Exactly. But they are together for quite a while. There's unknown adventures within this because they are together for a period of time. You don't know how long. It never really sort of establishes it. But they grow as a relationship, and they clearly are, you know, collected. I mean, this is not like there's Valeria who he meets in Red
Yes.
Nails, who is the more famous, I think, of his
She's in the movie as well, isn't she?
yes, yeah, like the Conan women. You know, she's like the Conan girls rather than the
Yeah.
Bond girls. Like Valeria is much more well known.
And you got like Red Sonja to a degree as well, I think.
Kind, yeah, it
Yeah.
appears and then sort of went off their own thing. But they have this relationship, and then they decide there's this great adventure to have down this river, and sack this city. And again, I like this bit, and it's also the water is poison, the black murky water, so that you can't drink of it. You fall in, you're done for. Like this is, you know, like a dangerous place. But no one knows what happened. Like, and other ships have gone down this river and never come back, or the ship has come back, but it's been empty. Like the crew has gone.
Oh, there was like that one gibbering madman, wasn't there? There was like
Yes,
one guy came back and couldn't speak and then died not long after. And it's like there's definitely something in there. I've seen it. I've seen something in the air around
yeah.
there. So we've got to go there. But yeah,
But that thing of her Belit's want and desire to go there, but it's why she's sort of like akin to Conan. She's not scared or afraid. She's like, well, I've got Conan at my side, and I've got the best crew on the seas. This is like the challenge. Like, come on. Like this feels like it's, and that's what I think she is kind of cool. Like there's moments when she's a bit written down as
sure,
Howard would
yeah.
do, but there are times when you're like, oh no, this is why she's in charge, because she's just as ballsy as everybody else on this ship. So fair play.
And like Conan, like throughout the story, like you said, I'm glad that they kind of don't kind of pin down like, because I think Howard was like, I could tell more stories with these characters maybe, and I'm glad they kind of don't pin down how long they're together, because I think other writers and comic book writers or
Fill in the
you know
gaps
have filled in the gaps and yeah played with that and stuff, and again she's an interesting character. And I like that we see like Conan is only really sticking around because of her.
Mm.
Like he's not entirely like in love with her or like besotted or like, at her kind of feet, bowing down to her or anything, or worshipping her. He sees her as an equal.
Mm.
And he said, life at sea isn't really, he says like life at sea really isn't for me, but she made it interesting. She made it something worth, doing. So if her idea was to, go to this, this forbidden world, this forbidden temple, go for it. Why not?
Mm.
And I kind of I like that. And again, later on in the story, we'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah, he does feel for her on a level, not maybe, I don't know if it's love or maybe it is Conan's form of love, but he does care for her in some form. However you want to.
No, well, I think it's worth touching on because she does say she says her feelings for him, and they are very much. She actually says between life and death. She's in that kind of speech area, isn't it? She says, "Well, I do believe in an afterlife, but if I was to see that it was you were between life and death, and your life was, I would come back from the afterlife to fight by your side or to protect you." So
Yeah.
she's very much in love with Conan. Like she sort of, sees him as a kid.
That's a nice, that kind of sets up later as well, doesn't it?
Yes.
I forgot about that. It kind of, I think I read it over 2 days, so I kind of forgot about that setup. So, but that's nice. That I like
Yeah, it's a bit of foreshadowing.
Mm.
But anyway, they do go down the river and they come across this sort of abandoned city, and there's all kinds of dead bodies and there's all kinds of bits going on, and they find a tomb full of jewels, as you do, and then they start to sort of take the jewels, and then all of a sudden, like they feel, I think they're being watched, and they start to describe the creatures that are watching them, and it's um
There's a big snake as they're going down that comes out, isn't there, and attacks
yeah,
the ship. And Conan, it grabs one of this person in the crow's nest, so he comes in and obviously chops it in half. The giant snake, like anaconda or something. And then there's hyenas later on, isn't there? There's some like corrupted hyena type
beasts. I mean, that's what I was looking to describe them. It's it's a great bird. There's a monster bat. It's an ape. There's basically, it's almost. I mean, they give it so much description. It's almost as close to like Lovecraft saying like it's an indescribable horror. And you go, cool. All right.
I'm scared. I'm really scared.
But it's basically there are these creatures that are not so indescribable, but they are. They are many things. They can't be pinned down to a single creature. Like, is it an ape? Is it a bat? Is it some sort of hyena?
I think they say panther at some point. The main creature,
the
main winged creature. I think they describe it as panther as well.
Yeah, but there was basically sort of like a winged ape and some of the bits, and that sort of like they end up sort of getting into a bit of a battle with it. And they call it the devil ape for a kind of time. But whilst they're doing this, and they sort of set to and they sort of chase after it and stuff, they realize that they've been duped. So whilst they've been engaged in this sort of fight, one of these creatures has gone back and to investigate their ship for whatever purpose, and in doing so, and Conan gets a bit pissed at Belit at this point because she's like, "Well, why do you worry?" And he's sort of like, "We don't know what they've done to the ship. Like, he could have smashed holes in the hull. They could have taken all our rations. So, and they do. That's what's happened. All the water has been the casks that hold their water has been smashed, so they have no clean water, only the poison water of the river. And so, that's when Conan sort of has to go off with a troop to go find clean water. But I don't know. I like this kind of section where it is. Because it's kind of like it's done to be kind of confusing as well, isn't it? Like it's set to put you off edge, like you don't know anything. Like they find the dead bodies that then they move out the way and they find the tomb, and you're like, oh, bonus. And then they're getting attacked, and then you've had this snake and you've had all these other things. Like it's very fast paced.
Yeah, I thought so. But I'm glad it didn't like. What I liked about this story is it did. I'm not a big kind of reader. I have done a very big book for Tonya's Band Books recently, which this book feels like a 1,000 years step back from that book. That was like very like positive. It's very much it's all about Black people and their experience within America. Very kind of like pro critical race theory. This is like I feel like I've gone back to the Dark Ages reading this in so many ways.
Well, this is kind of like where you go, that is why that book needs to exist, because of
Exactly.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure no one's banning Robert E. Howard, but they're trying to ban that other book, which is much better.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of, I think, like you said, it is a bit Prometheus-y. It's this old like dark
Mm.
temple. It made me think of like Alien Predator as well,
Mm.
like that whole temple thing going on. We don't know what it's about, and Belita, they get to this altar, and they're like, it's like a sacrificial altar from years past. Lots of the blood is still stained in the rocks,
Yes.
very like Aztec in a way. And they kind of turn over the altar, and all the treasure is below, and Belit's wearing it, and like so happy with it, and like sauntering back to the ship. And there's a moment before they turn over the altar, and she goes, "Oh, Conan, there's something in this grass." And Conan like runs over and starts like swinging his sword. He's like, "I'll protect you." Da, 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 da. And then they turn over the altar, revealing the treasure. But a tower, kind of like a trap, falls down
Mm.
and kills some of her crew. And she goes, "There was nothing in the grass. I did it to protect you because I knew that might happen." Which again is quite
Yes.
an interesting thing. Like, and again, maybe she doesn't really care for her crew necessarily, even though they kind of worship her, which is another kind of interesting dynamic to her character. And yeah, and that's when all the kind of weird stuff and like Promethean, black goo stuff kind of, again, we learn a bit more about that in the following chapter.
Mm.
But yeah, no, it was really interesting. Again, like he really does set the stage. It's really, the dialogue is, again, he gets to the point without kind of prolonging it. It's not a Tolkien thing where he's like describing a blade of grass for 20
Yeah.
pages. You know what I mean? He
Yes.
does. He gets the tone and the atmosphere in just kind of a few words, and
Mm.
I'm there. I'm in. Which again, is credit to his writing. He's very imaginative, and again, it's a short story. He knows he's got to get to the point. He's got to get to the action. This is what people are here for. Let's get on, set
Yeah.
the scene, and get to the action. Let's get cracking. And he does that expertly, I think.
Oh no, yeah, it's like you say, it's exciting stuff. Like you say, it's well paced, it's well, and this is where I think his descriptions are the best. Like you say, he's describing sort of like you say the altar, and it sort of says about the blood stains that sort of like they're not sure if they're fresh, but they're still on the stone, and you know, the creatures that are watching them. And it sort of says like there's not the jungle closed around them. It's sort of like you feel that you're claustrophobic and trapped in it and stuff. Um,
I guess it's kind of a bit. It's almost a bit like Apocalypse Now, Heart of Darknessy as well. They're going
yes,
down this stretch of kind of water into treacherous jungle terrain to somewhere. So yeah, there's an element of that to it, which again is quite interesting, and again is maybe part of his kind of strange fascination with all that kind of culture and kind of stuff. Whatever the term is, I can't remember what the term is for. What is it? Forget it. Don't worry about it.
no, yeah, no. I mean, it's just a quick sort of as they sort of go off to find the water or they're going up the hill. There's just these two lines here. It says the jungle closed quickly around them, changing the light from gold to grey. From the arching green branches, creepers dangled with like pythons. The warriors fell into single file, and you can sort of feel like okay, you're just closed in this base. And I think that's one of the things Howard's so good at is like his description of space is actually really good. Like when they sort of, whether it be the wide open seas or the closing jungle, like there's this real sort of like I always with all these stories so far, I always feel like the place
Yeah.
is tangible. Like, sort of how it smells and feels and looks, the lighting and all this other stuff. Like it is the sort of the ground underfoot and all this other stuff is really
Very, very evocative. Like
yeah.
I've got a wild imagination. I'm more of a comic book fan, and I'm quite visually stimulated, I think.
Mm,
But again, there's a reason why I like these stories, or remember liking these stories for several reasons. But yeah, absolutely, like the imagery and the descriptors and again, like the action sequences as well. Like, I can't remember a book where I'm like, I know how that feels. I know the kind of the rhythm and the how
yeah.
hard it's hit, and the way it's kind of, again, in my brain, it's kind of like, yeah, it just comes to life.
Yeah, pops,
But
doesn't it? Like
yeah,
I
it
say.
really does. And again, I think that's some of his best work in these stories. Definitely is his real skill set, I think.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And because the next chapter is kind of weird. The second chapter ends with Conan smells this, like I said, this black lotus, this flower, and it knocks him unconscious. And then the next chapter is basically like the history of this city,
Mm.
of how like there was these old, ancient winged creatures, and then there was sort of like, he describes them as um heroic in proportion, which I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it's great.
Mm.
They sort of where did it go? Cast in the mold of humanity, they were distinctly not human. They were winged and of heroic proportions, not a branch on the mysterious stalk of evolution that culminated in man, but the ripe blossom on an alien tree, separate and apart from that stalk. So it's like, well, they kind of came from the same evolutionary path as us, but they broke
Mm.
off into something
Yeah,
like weird,
alien or something. Yeah.
yeah, like crazy. Um, and it goes on. There's this whole thing about how they sort of evolved and they sort of created these cities, and then they were separate from all other human races
Mm.
until in some point, these lost soldiers come across them, and there's all this history and stuff. And I love this chapter. It's very sort of
Yeah.
descriptive, very weird. This is the one. This is the bit that felt most
Yes.
Lovecraftian to
Oh, very
me.
much so. Yeah. Ancient civilizations, cults, crypts,
Yes.
altars, worshipping gods, and then there's an earthquake, and then something from beneath the earth kind of bubbles up and infects everybody, and again that we get some unfortunate description of these creatures, these people that are infected by this black goo
Yeah.
stuff, which I thought was like, this is when I was like, fuck, really, like,
Well, this is because it's not just so the crew. When
yeah.
Conan wakes up, and
Mhm.
he sees that the other people have been killed around him.
Mm.
This sort of group
Sure.
that he took with him from water, but one is missing. Nagora, who was like the chief, like one of the senior sort of fighters of this group.
Yes.
And then this is where it's sort of like this is. I kind of laughed out loud at how awful this is when I read it. Um, at first, Conan thought it to be a great black gorilla. Then he saw that it was a giant black man that had crouched ape-like, long arms dangling forth, dripping from the loose lips. And he just kind of like,
You
what
know.
the Jesus Christ is that? Like, I had to read that twice when I read it because I
Yeah.
was like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
but even the creature. So there's like one main kind of antagonist creature that's remaining of this race of winged people,
mm,
and it's been infected by this
yes,
blackness from the
the
earth.
river, yeah,
Yeah, the river. It's come up, and they've drunk from it. Like some of the people didn't, and some of the people did. The people that
yes,
did drink from the river became grotesque and monstrous. And when he describes them, as he says, they're subhuman, they're superhuman, and he says they have misshapen skulls or brains or
mm,
something. And I was like, fuck me, come on, man. Like, you're not
yeah,
helping yourself here.
no,
Like, we've fair enough. I get the other stuff, but I'm that's that thing that sequence you just mentioned, and then the description not only of the creature itself. Again, and it's made out that it is, and he keeps calling it black as well. He keeps
hmm,
hammering home that it is a black creature. And I was just by the end of it, I was just like, I'm exhausted by this, man. I'm
yeah,
exhausted by your bigotry, just
yeah.
seeping into your stories. I don't know how much is in the other stories you and Matt
No,
have read.
this is the worst. I mean, this is the other stories are very much like one of them's.
Also, I apologize for picking this one
Yeah,
for that reason.
yeah,
I still enjoy the story and the adventure. I'm not a fan
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
this, all of that
The
stuff. Just to
the
be clear.
no, just like you said, no, the others were fine. I mean, the other one, the king when it's King Conan, it's just sort of like it's a plot to kill him, and it's kind of straightforward. And the other one is him breaking into this sort of bejeweled tower and sort of speaking to this ancient being that has the head of an elephant. So it's not like,
Hmm.
yeah, there's nothing there where you go, oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
you
Why
know,
did people think Robert E. Howard was a racist? I
yeah, you
wonder.
sort of read them and you go, oh, that's not so bad. Then you read this one and you go, oh, okay, all right, well, all right, that's sort of kind of,
I do remember one of the Solomon Kane books. He does have like a kind of a black friend or a black
mm,
sidekick, I
mm,
think, in the books. And again, it's his friend. It is his friend. It's a fellow, warrior adventurer. But they go to kind of an African kind of area. I guess in Solomon Kane, I think it's just Earth, isn't it? I believe. I
Yeah.
think it's
Yes.
just Earth. So it's some form of kind of and there's a word I was like, I didn't even know the racial slur existed, but it's the most racial slur that's ever racial slurred in your life.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is disgusting, and it is used over and over and over and over and over. I couldn't tell you which story it was, but I like it's more shocking than this. Like that is like the other end of this, but even this is still fucking awful.
No, but it kind of makes me wonder. Like, I almost want to get like, I'd love to, like, if I got Robert E. Howard on the podcast, if I could raise him up, bring him on the podcast and be like, can we just have a chat about this? Like, I want to just ask. I'd love to ask him and go, can you just not so much explain yourself, but like, where's your head at with this? I'm just really curious about some of this thing because I mean, he was a difficult and troubled
Yeah, yeah,
individual, committed
absolutely.
suicide
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
end.
yeah.
But like, there is this thing where you just want to say, can we just run through this a little bit and read it back to him and say, like, okay, so and you don't see a problem with this? No, all right, well, let's move on. Okay.
Because like it's not like black people didn't exist in America. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It wasn't like he was just like the only white person around in his area. There will have been black people in that area. I remember like I was watching something and they were like, oh, there's this rom com about Robert E. Howard. And I was like, what? And I was like, a rom com about Robert E. Howard? And well, maybe it's more of a drama.
oh, is this
But it's
Vincent
got
D'Onofrio plays him?
yeah, that one. Yeah, it's that one, and I think it ends obviously poorly for Robert E.
Yeah,
Howard. But I was like, how bizarre, and I kind of want to watch it as well because it's kind of supposed to be quite heartwarming and touching. But obviously, we know the kind of characters he created and the kind of world he created.
yeah, it's been on my watch list for a while. I forgot what it's called now, but like,
yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but I remember like seeing it. I was like, this kind of I have to see this almost
yeah,
to see how these two worlds even collide and work.
yeah,
But yeah,
it's about him meeting a woman that, yeah, it just has like this
yeah.
because I think it obviously leads to his suicide. But anyway,
I'll
to
look it.
return to
I'll look it up while you're talking.
yeah,
You do that.
so let's return to sort of like lighter topics.
Yes, please, please.
So following this, Conan does awake. He fights the creature and returns to the ship, and in doing so, finds out that everybody else has been killed. Like everybody's been wiped out. The entire crew have been killed by all these creatures. That they talk about the hyena creatures and other sort of. There's a whole like it's almost like the Island of Dr. Moreau kind of thing. Like they've they're kind of representations of different creatures, and of all of them, all the bodies are scattered, but Belit's body has been hung from the yardarm. So she is shown to have been hung, and she's been beaten, and so her body sort of is hanging there. And Conan cuts her down, and this is where it's like you think Conan actually shows like sympathy. Like he says like he holds her body and sort of like he doesn't weep. That's Conan doesn't do that kind of thing. But he sort of has a moment where he's sort of like this is kind of like grief. But as he's doing so, the ship is then attacked by the flying ape creature, the flying bat thing, whatever it is, and Conan sort of goes into sort of berserk rage to kill it, swinging his sword about. And that there's a kind of cool fight that lasts quite a while, to be honest. So it was just kind of I enjoyed this kind of thing of like him sort of stood above atop the poop deck on this ship and just sort of battling this thing in the end and literally like grabbing at it and cutting like ripping at it with his hands as well as his sword and
Yeah.
like it's where is it? Here we go. An instant he reeled off balance, its fetid breath hot in his nostrils, its jaws snapping at his neck. Then he hurled it from him to crash with bone splintering force down the marble steps. So you can imagine this is like a of one of those sort of ongoing battles through the sort of the ruins and all this other stuff. It's really cool. I mean, this is a really good fight.
Yeah, so good. Like I actually was like I was walking home, my like headphones battery had died. I went, you know what, I'm just gonna as I walk home, I'm just gonna read this. And I was like, I'm sure I almost got run over about 5 times when I was reading it. But yeah, I was so like gripped and like fully invested in the fight and how like visceral and bloody and kind of like it was a lot of just like bludgeoning, just bludgeoning in each other to death, and he's trying. He's like, I think he's got like a, he's dripping blood and he's scarred and he's got like a bad arm, I think. And he's still like this creature is like ferocious as well, like
Yeah.
a real like it's it's like they say superhuman as he describes it. But Conan is Conan at the end of the day. It's kind of I guess the you're a big fan of Rocky, so
Yeah.
I kind of see it as the kind of Ivan Drago and the Rocky,
Oh yeah.
Conan is the piece of iron that you can't beat, you know, which I thought was really, really cool.
But it ends with this moment, like you say, Conan is it says he's prostrate on the sort of the floor. He said he's battered, he's semi-conscious, he's bleeding, he feels vulnerable. This thing's about to sort of swoop down and kill him. And just then, it says a glimmer of white flash between it and its victim, and there stands Belit. And so she has come from beyond the grave to act as this sort of protection at this in this moment if he's most vulnerable, is most sort of endangered. And Conan sort of shouts her name, and he says she flashed a quick glance at him, and in her dark eyes he saw her love flaming. So she has sort of like worked away from beyond the grave to protect him this one last time. I was like, that is cool. Like that's
Yeah.
she's actually really badass. Like,
Yeah.
this is an awesome moment, and the
Yeah.
distraction's enough. It sort of distracts the beast enough that Conan can fight back, picks up a massive rock, and basically bludgeons this thing to death. You're like, yes. Um,
Yes. I think he even does he cut it as well? Does he cut
he
it in
does.
half? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Fucking so good. So good. And again, it's like it kind of gives him a second wind as well. He's like, because he did care about her, and like to
Yeah.
see her like basically crucified, let's call it what it is, on that. And again, nobody else got like the creature is intelligent enough to know that they had a connection. They, he protected her. Maybe it was when he protected her from the grass where they're like, oh, there's something in the grass. And, he jumped to her aid. Maybe that's what it was that the creature saw. And, that cruelty and that kind of brutality of it as well. Yeah, I love that. And again, that's very like, that you get that flash of the person from beyond the grave,
Mm.
and yeah, it just gives him that kind of impetus to find whatever he needs to win out in the end. I guess I don't know if it's kind of a fridging thing as well, maybe a little bit. I don't know if it comes under that kind of category, maybe.
Kind of, but it's not like her death. He doesn't sort of like do the Wolverine
Yeah.
thing of falling to his knees.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Like Conan doesn't do that kind of shit. So it's not
No.
like her death. This is where I think actually I think no, I don't think it is fridging, and this is where I
Hmm.
think there's a differentiator.
Hmm.
Fridging instigates a revenge plot or a sort
Sure.
of where it's sort of like, oh, I must go avenge this person. Whether she was alive or dead, Conan would have still been like, no, I'm going to kill this fucking thing.
Yeah. True. True.
Like it would have been the same. Like he would have been upset,
Hmm.
but like I don't
Sure.
think it would have given him any more impetus to go do it than if she'd been
No.
alive. If he'd have come back and found she's the only one left,
Hmm.
it's not like he'd have gone, let's pack up and go. He'd be
Yeah.
like,
True. No, that's true.
we're
Yeah.
gonna
He
we're
was
gonna
still.
kill it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's more about her and her agency because she, like you said,
yes,
she climbs herself out of the bowels of hell, or I guess it's in hell she is because she's a
yeah,
pirate.
yeah, yeah.
She's not innocent in any way.
No,
And the fact that she comes, so I guess it's kind of more of a team up, I guess, to
mm,
kind of an assist, a
yeah,
last minute
exactly,
assist.
yeah. And I think
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, she's a Conan girl. I know it's a
sure,
terrible term, but I'm talking like as a
sure,
Bond girl. Like
yeah.
Conan stories are all like one and done.
Hmm,
So there are very few, if any, sort of repeat characters.
hmm.
So if he ever meets a woman, like she's either going to die by the end of it, or then like with Valeria, like she literally just sort of says, "Okay, we're kind of done.
No, I'm off. Yeah,
I'm off my own to do my own thing." So yeah, I think but the whole ending, the
hmm,
finale of this book, is great. I love that whole fight, and I think it's like one of the most Conan things.
yeah.
Like last man standing in that sort of like pile of bodies, just sort of fighting across these ruins, and then
Hmm,
getting that assist. Um, the one thing I would say is, again, you say about Belit. there's a line here because the final one's just called the funeral pyre. So this is her sort of being cast off. Um, and where is it sort of? So you got Conan sort of basically sort of casting her off into the sea. And Belit had been of the sea. She had lent it splendor and allure. Without her, it rolled a barren, dreary, and desolate waste from pole to pole. She belonged to the sea, so to its everlasting mystery he returned her. He could do no more. For himself, its glittering blue splendor was more repellent than the leafy fronds which rustled and whispered behind him, the vast, mysterious wilds beyond them, and into which he must plunge. So you were right about what you were saying before, exactly what you said before. Like he's not interested in the sea, but like she gave it that kind of like pizzazz, that splendor, and that
Luster.
allure. Yeah,
Yeah.
where she was like, she's this kind of like, he never idolized anyone because that's not really what he does, but he elevated her to be like, I can respect and have affection for her, and without her, it's kind of like, eh,
Mm.
like that's not,
Yeah,
it's not good
exactly
anymore.
that.
Like that's kind of, so again, there's this kind of weird sort of double-handedness that Howard has, where it's sort of like she's going to be a sex object, but also kind of cool. I don't know. Is that kind of
Yeah, gives with one hand, takes away with the other. Yeah,
yeah,
like it's the same. I think it's the same with all these characters. I think he kind of is doing that all the way. Like he kind of doesn't want them to be. It almost like he wants them to have depth. But the only way you can have them have depth is like making them almost their basic kind of where they're from or who they are, what they look like.
yeah,
That's who they are. And it's like, well, no, but also they're not that. They're this other thing. Yeah, good, but it's also not kind of enough. I don't know. It's
yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's almost like every single one's got to have like that Cilla Black entrance. What's your name and where you come from? I am Conan of Samaria. Oh, cool, well done. I am Prospero
is
of
it.
Stygia, and you go, oh,
Hey,
brilliant.
he's not M Night Shyamalan. He's not
That's,
quite there.
yeah, that's it. Um, So yeah, you're right. I think there is a lack of depth, but they're also
Mm.
kind of in this pulpiness. I think there's no room for
Yeah,
too
true.
much deep characterization, but also a bit of characterization wouldn't go amiss to certain
Sure,
things.
sure, sure, absolutely. Like at least he gave like the leader of the second in command a name.
Yes,
He did do that, and there was another character, I think, another of the kind of African
Niaga. Yeah, who's
characters.
another one
Yeah,
of his favorites, sort of his ones he respects.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So again, it's not like Conan is not among his, inferiors. Like you said, they are warriors that he is
mm.
happy to work with them. He knows their names, he respects them. Same with Belit. And again, it's almost like it's the world itself is not a racist world.
Yeah. Conan's not racist in the
Conan's not
slightest.
racist. Like none of these things, none of these characters know. None of these characters know how Robert E. Howard is describing them.
Yeah,
Like it's you can
yeah,
clearly see it's him and his view on that world. And
yeah.
again, like some of the stuff he injects into it is amazing. The visuals and like you said, all the
Mm.
scripters and everything. And like again, like he does so much with so little and so little time, so little words. Like you feel, like you said, you feel you're there, you believe it, you buy into it. But it's just when
Mm.
he's just going, there's a black man over there,
Yeah.
right? Don't know why I had to bring it up again, but it's just what are you doing?
Yeah,
So
it
yeah,
is. It
it's
is. But
bizarre.
and also, like,
Bizarre.
she was an amazing fighter, large breasts, and you're just sort of like, what? That's not. It's
Yeah.
almost like
Mm.
I always imagine those sort of like late Victorian explorers, sort of like pith helmet, big mustache, and they're kind of like was it not Armstrong and Miller, one of the others that did like Peep Show. Those guys did Peep Show, one of those guys, and they did a sketch where it was like that. Or maybe it may have even been Key and Peele, where
Okay.
there's that thing, and they're kind of like two explorers going, "Oh, amazing people, magnificent fighter, noble, bloody noble, fantastic, large breasts." And you're sort of like, do you know what I mean? You're kind of like,
Yeah.
there's all that kind of thing, but you have to end on that.
Yeah.
You've almost got it.
I think the word I was looking for earlier was like anthropologist. I think
Yes,
like Robert E. Howard is kind of like an amateur anthropologist. I think that's where
yes,
his fascination is. Which again, there's nothing wrong with that, but the way he is
Yeah.
fulfilling that fascination is a very problematic matter. And he, again, there's an exoticness to it, and a fetishization of it.
Yeah.
It's bizarre, but again, like there's things about this story that, again, like if I just remembered all the racist crap,
Mm.
then I wouldn't have suggested it. I
Mm.
clearly, I even feel almost bad for suggesting it now, not remembering how bad it was back then. Again, I remember that Solomon Kane story quite
Yeah.
wildly, but this one, it kind of was like, I don't know what happened, but it must have just fallen out of my mind palace how very racist it is. But again, like we've said, there's some good stuff in here. There is some, there is, and again, you can. I think with this story, it is hard to separate the art from the artist.
Yeah. A little bit.
I really struggled with this one to not go, fucking hell, Robert. I
Yeah.
just feel like I want to, like you said, like having me just slap him, just say, what is this? Like he
Yeah.
needed. Where was the editor when it was like, you've used the term black in this one paragraph 3 times? Can you maybe just leave it at one?
Something different. Or yeah, at least think of like
Yeah,
a different
a different
descriptor.
word, or
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, like anything, literally anything else, like just for
Yeah.
the sake of variety, Robert, Christ,
Well, one thing that's interesting you say about that, you say about being an anthropologist. When I look at, like, say, again, these kind of writers that were writing these things, because this was in Weird Tales, like, in
sure,
the
sure.
late 20s, early 30s. And I'll say the same for Lovecraft.
Hmm.
They had big visions of the world, but never traveled.
Mm, mm, true.
Like, like Lovecraft lived in, Providence, Rhode Island. The furthest he went really was when he moved to New York for a period of time, hated it, and moved straight back.
Too
And
multicultural, definitely.
oh well, yeah. If you've ever read sort of the his Red Hook story, which is kind of like where it's like that's his experience of New York in a story, and you're like, oh, okay, you did not like this place. Um, and I feel the same with Howard when it's kind of like, what was he, Texan? I think
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. You get the feel that, like, okay, you've traveled like 4 counties over in probably like a couple of directions. Other than that, you've read some books, you've probably read some National Geographic, and you've probably seen some of this African footage
Mm.
that was shot, for like, if you ever watched King Kong, that's a good example. That uses some, and
Yeah.
there's some other those films that did that kind of stuff, like stock
Mm.
footage
Mm.
of different animals. Like I can imagine Howard watching those and going like, taking thoughts and notes and going, right, that's how I'm going to describe this in the next book or the next story. But he's never actually experienced anything firsthand. They didn't
Yeah.
travel beyond a certain realm.
It's almost like, I guess it's kind of like they want to touch the fire, but they're worried that they're going to get burnt. Like they want to experience the world and go out and visit these cultures, and they're living kind of vicariously almost through their characters. Like Edgar Rice
Mm,
Burroughs as well, I think there's a little bit of that in there. Again, I don't know
yes.
his background, but there is that kind of like, I want to live, I want to do this, I want to have great adventures, I want to have sex with beautiful women, and be the king of a new undiscovered country. There's definitely a vibe for all of those. Maybe not so much Lovecraft, where he's like, I
Yeah.
really want to be these characters. I
Yeah.
really want to go fucking mad, and see undescribable evil. But yeah, I think there is those, like we said, self-insert ideas and things. But yeah, he's a fascinating individual. Like, however you feel about him, and his writing and his work.
Mm.
And Conan will live on. I think it's is Conan in the public domain yet, or will be shortly? I
Um,
think
if
it
not
is.
already, then very, very soon. I mean, these were
Yeah,
originally published in the first one was like 1932. So yeah, no, it must
yeah,
be because it's like 75 years, unless there's
yeah,
like a Howard estate. I don't know if it went to his
yeah.
family
Maybe
or whatever,
maybe
but
it's maybe it's certain stories or certain elements. Maybe
yeah.
it's something like that. But yeah, I know Marvel bought the rights recently for the comics, and they did a slew of comics recently. I think their comics are being made by somebody else now, or maybe they've just stopped doing it because they don't have the
Dark
rights to
is
it.
Dark Horse going about Titan?
Are they
Someone's
doing?
Titan. I think Titan Comics might be doing Conan again at the moment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. It was Dark Horse. I remember for a very long time. Then Marvel got it again, and then kind of reprinted all their Marvel stuff, and then yeah, I think it's with somebody else now. But yeah, he'll live on. Like he
Yeah.
is iconic. The character is iconic. The movie's iconic. The cartoons, comics, short stories, audiobooks. This character exists. Much like Mickey Mouse or something like that. There will always be a Conan, story or something. You don't get those sword and sorcery movies of the 80s, the barbarian movies or anything like that without, and even up until, like things like Dungeons and Dragons or Rings of Power or, Game of Thrones, there's elements of Conan in all of those, especially the sexy stuff and the really dark, disturbing, brutal stuff. And that side of Game of Thrones, especially. But yeah, like and people interpret that character in so many different ways. The same with Red Sonja, who's had various different origins and backstories and things like that. However you feel about that man, that character is iconic and will live far beyond. And people won't probably know the stuff that we've talked about or know about the writer himself. And maybe they probably don't want to know, to be honest, and they don't want to read those short stories. And I would probably read. I would say go and read an adaptation of this story in a
Yes.
comic or
Yes.
elsewhere. Again, as good as it is, and I've enjoyed reading it, I think in this day and age, in this 2024 vision, we look at the world, through that lens. I think there's some great people that have adapted it without the problematic
Oh,
elements.
100%. And also
Yeah.
beyond like Howard. I mean, I've got the complete, the Conan
Nice.
Chronicles, the complete sort of Howard story. But I would say that although these are good, I do enjoy a lot of these stories, and I as we've sort of said, identified how problematic they are.
Mm.
I'm not even sure this is the best Conan. Like you said, there's the
Mm.
adaptations, the
Yeah.
comics have been done, but beyond this, like other people stepped up and started writing Conan up. There's a new one that's literally just come out this year.
All right. Okay,
A
cool.
new from Titan Books. So people are writing like new Conan adventures, and there are others. And he did a blazing sort of like the pulps all came back in the 70s, and they picked it up, and there was a whole bunch of others that were written. So I'm not even sure Howard wrote the best Conan. He probably wrote some of the purest Conan, but I say it's arguable that others have written better Conan stories.
Sure.
So yeah, no, you're right. I think you're right. Go check out some of the adaptations stuff. If you want to go check the source material, do, because it is.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff in
yeah,
there.
just bear that in mind. Yeah, like go in with that proviso that you're probably going to hear and see some things that are problematic.
Yes.
And like you said, like there's plenty of authors out there and other people who are not problematic writing some excellent stuff. So
Yes.
go out and seek that. Like you said, these new people that are writing Conan stories and giving new life to that character and giving it new depth. Again, and it's just kind of again like Stan Lee, people took over after him and added more and more and more onto that already, established character that again are integral elements to say Spider-Man or the X-Men or various other kind of these kind of iconic characters. So yeah, do it. Dip your toe in the Hyborian age. Maybe not in the waters of the Black Coast, because you might turn into a crooked, weird hyena thing.
Yes. Don't drink the water. Don't drink the water.
Don't drink that water.
Take some bottled water with you.
Maybe that's what happened to Howard. Maybe that's what happened.
Yes.
Maybe H.P. Lovecraft gave. He said, "Drink, just have a bit of this.
Have a tipple. It's good for you." Yeah.
Oh, I'm racist now. I'm really racist. All the bile starts coming out of him. Yeah.
The film we mentioned, it's called The Whole Wide World. It was 1996.
Perfect.
And
I am going to watch that.
I am going to watch it. I've just had a quick look. It starred Vincent D'Onofrio as Robbie Howard and Renee Zellweger as I forget. I can't say the name now. Novelaine Price, her name was, and it's a true story about their friendship. Leading up to, I believe, Howard's death. So
I believe so too. I think I remember that. But yeah, again, that might give me a new appreciation for him as well, and maybe it'll I can see him in a new light after.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Reading this book. So yeah,
I might come back to a bit about it.
Yeah. Hey, if you want me back on to talk about that film, I'm more than happy. And
it might be interesting. It'd be interesting sort of to round out the sort of the Howard. I wouldn't, one of the things I'm having read the Conan books. I've read a couple of other stories whilst I've been doing this, and some of the short ones dipped in and stuff.
Yeah.
And it has made me think like, oh, he is good. I've never read a Solomon Kane story.
Okay.
I think I can't. I don't want to read the one that you've suggested.
No, I'm not
But
I'm not
yeah,
suggesting it, by the way. I'm
yeah,
just saying I read one, and it's if you think this is bad, that is worse.
yeah.
Um,
But I know there are others, and so I might have to track down the Solomon Kane book and sort of see if there's try some of those out as well. I'm kind of because he wrote others, like he wrote Call.
yeah, Call the Conqueror. It was like he was before Conan, wasn't he? And
Yes,
it was like the fall of Atlantis, or he's from Atlantis, or something.
yeah.
I know there's a Kevin Sorbo movie. I remember. But
Oof, that
again,
doesn't help anything.
speaking of problematic
Yeah,
people,
yeah, yeah. I do think because the other thing obviously is we'll just end on this about these adaptations. Like we obviously had the Arnold Schwarzenegger films. I liked both
Hmm.
Barbarian and Destroyer. Destroyer obviously was a bit more PG, but I still think it's fun. I struggle with the Momoa one.
Okay.
It's fun, but
Hmm.
like I don't know, there's kind of like it has a kind of there's a glossiness to it that I feel
Hmm.
doesn't. I don't know. I don't know.
Misses
There's
the
a
point.
yeah, almost like there's this the first that sort of kind of the barbarian, kind of the destroyer feel kind of like dirty fantasy, like we
Yeah.
talked about. Like they're kind of grotty and that sort of thing.
We
Kind
know,
of
we know how much E. Howard loves his dirty fantasies, especially with his
exactly.
ladies.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the Momoa one feels like it's been cleaned up and given that high fantasy kind of edge,
He
which
does. I will say, he does look good as a
oh, he's
Conan.
awesome.
I
He's
can really like. I can really like. That is the look for me, like the classic look.
Momoa
And
is yeah, Momoa is the best part of that film.
hmm.
He works as Conan, but like the rest of it kind of feels a little bit like Willow. I think that's the closest description. And I kind of like Willow, but I'm
I
like,
like Willow. I like Willow. I
yeah,
rewatched it. I rewatched it before the show came out. Didn't see the show, and then it was gone.
yeah,
Um, too
yeah.
late. Too late.
But I shouldn't.
Blinked
But
and I missed it.
yeah,
But yeah, I saw it, but I don't remember it well. I
yeah.
think I might even own it. I just
Mm,
haven't ever gone back to it, which might
no.
say a lot about it.
But if I'm making comparisons between Conan the Barbarian and Willow, then I'm like, okay, you've kind of missed the mark on this one. But yeah, but Red Sonja is coming to the screen. They are currently in production for a new Red Sonja
Yeah,
film.
that's
So I'll
correct.
be into so I think there could be a new Conan film. I think we could
Yeah.
do it. There
Do you
should
think
be
they
one.
do it? Because there's been talk about Arnie doing a King Conan,
Nah,
like an
I think
older
he's
Conan.
too old now. He's sort
Yeah.
of granddad
Could
Conan sort of.
could he be a King Conan, but like maybe the lead character is like a son or somebody else, maybe like
I'd have it. I'd
son
have
of
it.
Conan.
No, I think you could do a final one if you had because I mean his son. If you've ever seen Arnold's son,
Hmm.
um, whose name escapes me now.
Hmm.
He's got two sons, and one of them is following in his path, and he's quite
Hmm.
a big dude. Get him bulked up, have it bookended because you had Mako, the guy is it Mako,
Yes, yeah,
Mako
Mako, yeah.
doing that sort of like in the land of high adventure and doing that. And I love this. Have Conan do it. Actually, sort of have like his, I would tell you a story of, and then have him sort of intro it as Arnie, and then have his son play Conan,
Oh, that's
um,
cool. Yeah.
and then tell a story.
I think that was an idea for one of the Die Hard movies. They were going to do like a Die
Oh,
Hard year
yeah,
one, and he was going to kind of periodically come in and go. Back in the 70s, I was, and there was
yeah.
this, and there was that. I read the
I was
comic.
beating up hippies.
John McClane beating up hippies. I did the comic for Patreon a while back. It wasn't great. It wasn't great, unfortunately.
I remember picking it up somewhere and flicking through it and thinking like, no, this feels like it's not something I want to ingest. Like it didn't feel like it was
It's
any
not Die
good.
Hard. It's not Die
Yeah,
Hard.
yeah.
I read another one as well. There was a different one that was kind of like almost a sequel to the films. It was an older McClane, probably like the age Bruce Willis is now.
Mm,
And again, that was really cartoony and weird. I quite enjoyed it, but it was yeah, bizarre one. But yeah, I covered all of those. But yeah, it was not. They were not fun to visit.
yes.
So I wouldn't recommend those either.
Yeah, give those a miss. Let's go watch the films again. The first
Yeah,
four at least. I kind of like five
exactly.
is
Yeah.
an interesting beast.
I don't think you know what? I don't think I ever saw 4 or 5. I definitely saw the first 3, but I don't think I saw 4 or 5. But
On a completely
maybe.
different note, yeah, I recommend four. It's kind of fun and silly, but five is this? It's on par with like Terminator Genesis.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Twin-
got the same star in it, hasn't it?
Exactly. Joe Courtney is basically the kiss of death on any sort of like mid 2000 teens action film, is how to put it.
Hey,
Anyway,
I like it. I like his Captain Boomerang. I will say that.
I mean, he redeemed himself a couple of times, but he's also done some utter trash as well. So, you know. Anyway, for now, we'll wrap up there. It's been great. I've enjoyed doing this. I mean, we'll do. I think we will
Yeah,
come back. We'll talk about some other bits and pieces again soon. We'll try and get something in.
definitely.
But for now, Dan, where can people find you and what are you up to?
Oh, well, you can find me on spiderdanandthesecretballs.com. I've recently left X, but I have joined Threads, and it's
Me
Spider Dan.
too.
Yay! The cesspool. We're out. We've got out. We've not
It's-
touched the Black Coast. We're not touching all of that black goo
no.
and all that stuff. We're not getting involved in all that corruption and that's a hive for racism as well. If you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's mainly the reason I left, but a lot of other reasons as well. So yeah, go on my website. All the links are there for everything. Shows I've done with Scott. We did House on Haunted Hill over on here. So there's a link over there to listen to me and Scott talk about that and all my other guest spots and various other episodes. I'm doing a Spider-Man 3 and the Amazing Spider-Man 2 comparison.
Oh,
So
yes.
with my friend Dan Keatis, and we're going to find out what is the best of the worst Spider-Man sequels, which again the patrons voted for. And then I just said I've got a band books coming up in October with Tonya, and we're doing Shock Phobia Fest, so we're doing all the kind of Halloween-based horror stuff. I'm doing cultist movies with Ria. I'm doing the Batman with Tonya and Andy. I'm doing Livid with Dan Burgess, and I'm releasing a Patreon exclusive, which was Halloween Night Dance from a couple of years back.
Okay.
I'm releasing that to the public, which is a sequel to Halloween H2O and fills in the gap between that and Resurrection. Does it do it well? You'll have to find out. You'll have to find out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all the stuff I've really got coming up. Again, more continuous kind of Patreon stuff. I'm doing more Halloween comics over there if you want to join Patreon. But that, in a nutshell, is what I'm doing at the moment. Oh, sorry, I'm recording Disney discussions tomorrow about both Tron films as well.
Yes. Oh, Tron. Yeah. Tron Legacy. Interesting film. And the new one. They've obviously do a new one soon, aren't they? So,
Yeah, Tron Ares. Have
Yeah.
you watched Tron Uprising?
The anime thing.
Yeah, the animated
I did.
series.
Yeah.
I really like that. I thought it was really, really good.
It was interesting. It definitely had some yeah. No, because Tron I watched Tron Legacy before and I was like, oh, I better watch it, watch the anime thing. I was like,
yeah, it's good. It's good, but it kind of unfortunately got cancelled way too early. But I thought it had some potential. Kind of somewhere between like Star Wars, Spider-Man, Batman Beyond. But yeah, I dug it.
the visuals are great. Anyway, yeah, go check all that stuff out. And I say that we'll put some links down below to make sure people can find it. For me though, if you enjoy what we're doing, please leave a review. This has been we've gone through this sort of story time. There's some other stuff coming. Not sure what else. We might do some. We're going to come back to do some more Conan. But we have got some other things coming up as well. So, but for now, thank you very much, Dan. I really appreciate it. It's been fantastic fun. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. And we'll see you on the next episode.